Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the information on last week's show, Saving Money for Our Future, informative. If you are unable to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. If you'd like to receive notifications on when our podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. If there are topics you'd find beneficial or questions you have, please feel free to reach out to me at media@abandp.com. Now let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Having booked nearly 1,500 speaking engagements on behalf of her clients, it would be safe to say that Anastasia Lipske, founder of Access Speakers, knows what it takes to get booked to speak. Before creating her high-touch speakers agency, she had more than 30 years of experience in the tourism industry. Her sales, marketing, and PR know-how built her credibility with international suppliers whom she helped grow their businesses. Through creating women's retreats and organizing social media conferences, Anastasia has firsthand knowledge of the other side of booking speakers. She speaks the language of speaker chairs and event planners tasked with finding great speakers for their meetings. It pleases her to know that she is helping people grow their businesses, brand themselves as speakers, and spread their messages. As a co-author of the book, Business Success with Ease, Anastasia shares her insight on how to build your public speaking business to generate influence, awareness, and clients, with a strong emphasis on speaker branding. She shares why public speaking and guest podcasting are such effective marketing tools, as well as her tips and tricks on how to get started. Anastasia's energetic personality and passion for the speaking industry come through in every talk she does, as she inspires people in business to use one of the most powerful tools in existence, the voice. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Candy. So great to be here. Really appreciate your time.
It's going to be a fun interview, and this is right up the alley of what I'm doing even right now, having a guest on my podcast. So if anyone is interested in learning how to be a guest or speaking on the stage, I'm sure you're going to have some great tips for us. But before we get into questions I have for you, I would love for you to tell me a little bit more about yourself and how did you even get into public speaking?
Well, it's kind of one of those God things that I just feel like life was directing me towards this. And as you shared, I had been in tourism for 30 years. And then in 2008, walked away from a very comfortable position, thinking that I would not have a problem being hired because I knew a lot of people in the industry. And that was in 2008, in April. And the tourism industry was hit, like slammed in that economy crash. And so, I'd call presidents of cruise lines. They'd say, I'd hire you in a minute, but we just laid 50 people off yesterday. So that was the start of 2 very difficult years trying to find work. And in the interim, I ended up being offered a position to just work part-time for a sustainable farm that my daughter worked for. And the owner needed some help with their sales and marketing. I was like, okay, whatever, I need work. I'll do it. Loved the experience. But it wasn't really what I was looking for. Then I ended up working for a social media company that was putting on conferences. And because of my event planning experience, I came in and I helped this gal as well and got really involved in social media at the time. Then walked away from that because that wasn't so great either. And then next thing I know, that farmer is calling me saying, hey, my business coach said I should be speaking to grow my business. I want people to come and do a tour of the farm. And supposedly, if I go out and talk to community groups, I'll get people to come out. Will you find me speaking in opportunities? And I was like, okay, sure. Why not? I'm unemployed. I'll do anything once, twice if I like it. So I did it. And I just started reaching out to any organization that I could find that had speakers. Well, in the process of doing that, I found that I was really good at it. and it was hugely successful. It actually became her number one marketing tool. And I use that example in the book that we co-authored. I talk about the actual success. I had stats and data from her because she kept track of everything. So she ended up going out to her BNI members, like saying, you all got to do this. Other people found out about what I was doing. Next thing I know, I had a whole portfolio of people wanting representation. I've never marketed my business. There's just a huge need for what I do because it's a lot of work. And I've built up this black book, if you will, of groups that are looking for speakers to come and present to their meetings. So that's where it started. And I just kind of kept it going from there. Since the pandemic, though, we now offer the opportunity to book guests for podcasts. So we've really gone virtual, pivot was the word, right, of 2020. Right. And March of 2020 was a very bad month for me. As you can imagine, everything that I had booked for my clients was canceled. Every email that came in was a cancellation. And we didn't know what the world was going to be like. So it was pretty dark. And then as it extended and time went on, people started adapting and going virtual. And next thing you know, we have virtual meetings happening left and right. Even people that are meeting in person again are doing hybrid meetings. Podcasting that was just growing exponentially had kind of, in my opinion, from what I had seen, it kind of plateaued a little bit. The moment this happened, bam, like everybody's on podcasts. My grandchildren listen to podcasts. So I realized this is the time to do podcast, bookings. I had thought about it, but didn't have the bandwidth. So we expanded and have found that that's another huge part of what our business offers. And it's just been a glorious thing for people, especially speakers who have been grounded during this pandemic. Podcasting is the best way to get their name out there, be visible. It's the ones that are still visible during this time when all the meetings were canceled. They're the ones that are going to come out ahead, especially when people start meeting again. So the evergreen factor of podcasting and virtual meetings is huge because your name and speaker or your name and podcast guest, they're out there on the internet, and it helps with your SEO rankings every time that you are mentioned out there, in particular, if you really utilize it and do some of that marketing yourself. So that's where it started.
That's great. I'd love to hear those stories too, of when something just kind of happened. It wasn't intentional. I mean, that's the same thing with my own business too. I hadn't intended to be a business owner. I hadn't intended to ever have a podcast either, and someone reached out to me and said, I love the content that you share through your blogs. I think it would be great to, have a radio show, which that's how I started originally. Now, of course, I'm doing video too, but never my goal, but here we are.
Here we are. You just, when a door is opened, if it's a good one, go through it, because otherwise you'll always wonder what's on the other side. Right. And no one, when I think about it, sometimes no one in their right mind would do what I do. I mean, when you think about the general idea, people pay me to speak for free to a group.
Right.
But those that really understand the value of speaking, they know that they simply pay for my fees out of their marketing budget. And same thing with those that want to do it themselves, but they want to know how to better brand themselves so that they can get booked to speak or get booked on podcasts. That's just part of their marketing budget, but it is one of the most effective marketing tools that are out there, because speaking and podcast guesting is like sample advertising, which is the most effective form of advertising. So people basically get a taste for who you are and what you are all about, and they're either going to resonate with you or not. But it can be really powerful when they do resonate with you, as long as you know how to work that relationship and, of course, follow up.
So if someone is listening to this now and they're thinking, okay, I need to get out there, I need to start speaking, or I want to be a guest on a podcast, how do they even find something that's available to be a guest on?
There are a myriad of ways. How much time do we have? Not enough to cover it all. But what I will say, the place you start is with your current clients, because you want to reach your current clients. So you want to go to the places that they meet. You want to be on the podcast that they listen to. So you go to your current clients and you tell them, I want to speak to groups and organizations. I want to be a podcast guest. Tell me something about the types of podcasts that you listen to. Tell me about the groups that you might be a member of, or organizations, your clubs, your, anything like that. Start with that first and foremost. Then from there, you go into all your contacts. Basically, you connect with people that you have a relationship with on LinkedIn, your Facebook, social media contacts, family, friends. You ask. So many people just don't even think to ask the people that they know, because they assume maybe that if somebody knows about a great group or knows about a great podcast, that they're going to automatically tell them. But no, they don't know necessarily that you're looking, or they assume that you've already got your list. So you craft an email. You could do it that way. You could do phone calls, however you want to do it, post it on social media. Ideally, if you have a one sheet first that has, basically everything that a person would need to know before considering you as a podcast guest or as a guest, to their meeting, have that one sheet and attach it. Share that piece and say, hey, I'm looking to get booked. Can you take a peek at this? Can you send this to anybody that you know that you think it might be a good fit for? Or at least let me know the names of the shows and I'll go out after them. But that's the best place to start. So you start with your clients, find out where they are. You start with the people you know, ask them. And then the third thing is that you search, you do Google searches. When it comes to podcasts, there's great search engines. I use Listen Notes the most. There's many out there, but I like the simplicity of it. One of the challenges with Listen Notes is that it does tend to pull up more of the larger podcasts, but almost any podcast can be found there. And then you can click on whether you want to look at it, in the iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or you want to look in these different avenues that they can go in. When it comes to looking for speaking groups, then you just start looking for meetings based on that category, or associations. I mean, you could go down that list forever. Another place that you can ask for them that I think a lot of people forget about is you ask the people that you have just spoken to. So when you have a meeting that you are speaking to, you're doing a presentation, or you're, on a podcast, always say, hey, if you got value from this presentation that I just did today, do you know of any groups or organizations that I can get in front of? Please meet with me in the back of the room, or put it in the chat if it's virtual, or here's my email, let me know, or better yet, let me have your email. And you connect with people that way, because they're warmed up and they're not necessarily going to sit there and think, oh, they'd be really great for Charlie's Rotary Club. They're not going to think about that. But if you ask, then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh my gosh, my brother-in-law, Charlie, he's a member of a Rotary Club. I bet they'd love to have them. So we just need to, kind of feed that into people and prompt them with a seed and a direct ask. You're not asking them to buy anything. You're just asking them for connections, and people love to connect people. I think we're inherently natural networkers, but not everyone thinks of it of their own accord. So that's another great way to do it. And always specifically ask the speaker chair that booked you, or the podcast host or producer. You can ask them in an email that you do as a follow-up. You can also, I send thank you notes, and I always recommend to my clients that they send a handwritten thank you note to anyone who hosted them. And then in that thank you note, they can also say, if you know of any groups or organizations or podcasts, please let me know. I would love to be connected with anyone or know about those shows. So there's a lot of ways that you can build that black book. And, and another thing, a really good hit list. Find someone that speaks to your audience, either because you have a similar message, or you just know that they're speaking to the types of people that you want to get in front of. Go to their website. And if they're a serious speaker, they're going to have a dedicated page or a dedicated website. And in their speaker information, they're going to have a list of previous speaking engagements, previous podcasts that they've been on. That is a perfect hit list to start with. Because if that person speaks to these groups and you have a similar message, or at least it's a similar demographic that you're speaking to, and those people spoke to them, that bingo, right there, you start with that list as well. Podcasts, sometimes it's not really evident until you start researching the podcast as to whether they even bring guests in. Sometimes podcasts are just the host and they're the only ones talking, right? So if you see that someone has been as a guest on that podcast, that kind of tells you right then and there that obviously that podcast is looking for guests. So
Perfect. Earlier too, you mentioned one sheet, and there may be someone who's listening who doesn't really know what that is. So I would love to just explain what is on that one sheet and, how do they go about even using it?
Absolutely. So in the speaking world, we have called it a speaker one sheet, a speaker sheet. Sometimes it's actually more than one page. Initially it was designed to be one page, but sometimes there's so much content that people will go to 2 or even 3 pages. I do not recommend that unless you really, really are a professional speaker, high end, and you have a lot to share. Most of the event planners and speaker chairs, they would rather just have one sheet to look at. So that's kind of how it's been dubbed as that. The long and short of it is that that piece is a promotional flyer, if you will, that you would share with potential podcast hosts and producers and speaker chairs. The biggest mistake that I see people make on those one sheets is that they are promoting themselves in their business. So the basic format, you're going to want to have at least a photograph, a professional photograph. If you can have 2 photographs, in particular, one of you speaking or with a microphone, kind of an action shot, that's even better. You want to have your bio, you want to have your name, you want to have what you do. And then you want to have your suggested topics, or it could be sample interview questions, depending upon what audience you're going after. And then you're going to have testimonials. And you'll have a partial list of previous speaking engagements or podcast shows that you've done. And what I've seen, like time and time again, the testimonials are people talking about how great they are in their business. Candy Messer, her accounting services is amazing. She saved me this much money and this much hassle, blah, blah, blah. Wonderful. Great. But that's not the purpose of the one sheet. The one sheet, the purpose is to get you booked. Mm-hmm. When you speak is when people will have the opportunity to know a little bit more about you and how good you are in your business. So that's the biggest mistake. Believe it or not, people forget to put their contact information in there. You want to make it really clear to book, contact Candy, and then have your email address and ideally your phone number and your web address. Time and time again, I see people wanting to get booked for things, and yet they're not accessible. They don't put their phone number down. They don't put their email down. Or if they put their website, you get to their website and you have to fill out a bloody contact form. Oh, does that say, I want you to find me? No, that's just putting up a wall, a barrier, and people don't have time for that. So you want to be really accessible. So that one sheet, what's beautiful in this digital age, used to be, you printed them and you went and you carried your printed one sheets with you to every gig that you did. You laid them out on the table in the back of the room, you would mail them or put them on the chairs. We don't do that anymore. It's all digital. And the beauty of that is that it's easier to change it too.
Right.
So once you have it designed, you can always continue to upgrade it and tweak it. Your topic, generally you want to have your signature talk that you do. But if you can speak on many other things, then you can, you could say Candy also speaks on blah, blah, blah. And those are just like 1-line sentences of some topics. Mm-hmm. The topic itself, you want to go a little bit deeper. You would have a great compelling topic title, a paragraph descriptive, not very long, and then a few key takeaways. So when someone's eyes are just drawn to look at that speaker sheet, they're going to see those bullet pointed key takeaways. And right then and there, it's going to tell them whether they want to read more about this person or not. So
right.
that's, I could talk forever also about speaker sheets, but that's the brief version of what you do with it. And then you just be really visible about it. You have it linked on your site. You share it with people. You just make it easy for people to have access to that.
Perfect. Well, thanks. Because I know when I first heard that term, I wasn't sure, what it was either. So I figured if someone's listening, they might not know. So
Absolutely.
thank you for sharing that.
It definitely is an industry term, and people can, though, they can Google, if you Google under images and just say one sheet or speaker sheet, you'll see a plethora of examples that you can look at. You'll see bad ones as well as good ones, but you'll see a lot of options, but you'll get a sense for what you really resonate with. And just try to imagine that you're the person culling through all these one sheets. Who would you hire? So that's what you want to focus on.
Perfect. So then once somebody is, speaking or is a guest on a podcast, then what can they do to really get the most out of having that interview and being visible after having that interview?
You want to really eke every opportunity you can out of every single talk and podcast show that you do. So you're going to see this, Candy. So what will happen? This is not going to air for a little bit. That's the way many podcasts work, right? But I'm still going to share about this show. I'm going to go into my social media channels, which for me, LinkedIn is my number one place that I like to work. Facebook, not as much, but I do a little bit on Facebook. But I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say, oh my gosh, what an amazing talk and interview I had with Candy Messer, and I will tag you as a host. If you have a business page, I will tag that as well. And I will say, the upcoming interview, I will share the link once it's live. I think it's going to be in the middle of February or something like that. Thank you, Candy, for being such an excellent host. Then I will be sending you a thank you card. I feel like I'm letting all the this is so awkward, but I want you to see this is how it works, right? This is how you really get every little bit out of it. I like those personal handwritten thank you notes. So because it stands out. Right. And not even the send out a card. We all know send out cards are not, I'm sorry if anybody sells them, but it's not the same thing as you handwriting a thank you note. It's not going to, it's going to take me 10 minutes, right? So I'm going to do that. Then when I get the link from you, I'm going to share the link again. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Whatever I feel like saying at the moment to really praise you as the host, and link to your show, link to your company, like anything that I can do. So, because here's the thing, every podcast is looking to grow their listenership, their subscribers, their downloads, their reviews. That's what it's all about. So anything that I can do to help you as a show host get more exposure, that I can bring some of my connections in to experience your show for the first time, that helps you. You know other people who have podcasts. So you could be a really good referral for me. Same thing if it was a virtual talk or even an in-person talk. The person that I connect with, that group, I can be tagging them in all kinds of things because they want new members. Almost everything that you're going to be speaking at, they have something that they would love the exposure one way or the other. So you're branding yourself. You're being very visible about the fact that you're speaking and podcast guesting. You are praising whoever it was that hosted you, tagging them, hashtags. You also are going to say in your post, if anyone knows of any other podcasts that I can get on, please let me know. I'm always looking to be a guest on a fabulous show. I'm continually reinforcing that. So those are just some of the key things that you can do for each and every talk. I always recommend sharing about it beforehand and sharing about it after. But yeah, utilize every little bit of it as much as you possibly can, because it's really a win-win-win when you think about it.
Right. I think some of the things that you were sharing about that speaker even just being able to get more visible by, sharing that and tagging, the person that they were interviewed by. Mm-hmm. Also, on the flip side, also will potentially bring the opportunity to be a guest again, right? On
Absolutely.
That podcast.
Yes. I mean, it's just human nature, right? So if you really resonate with somebody and that person took time to help you get more visibility for your show, and you're like, oh, should I bring them back or them back? Who's the person you're going to bring back? The one that is going to be more supportive of your show. That just kind of goes without saying. But another way to really be visible is that if you have a newsletter that a lot of people have their e-newsletters that they send out on a monthly basis or whatever. I always love it when people are speaking or they're podcast guesting, that they have, generally more towards the bottom because they want to get their key content out, but they would say like, where's Candy speaking next? Mm-hmm. And they have all their upcoming talks and their upcoming podcasts. They can also say, see where Candy has spoken, or both. And then if it's, especially with podcasts, you can link to them, which is really nice. Virtual meetings, depends on the group. Sometimes, like I'm a member of the Golden Gate Breakfast Club. We record everything and we love it for people to share recordings of our meetings, because we want more visibility for our club and what we're doing. So you can also link to some of the virtual talks, but have those in your newsletter. And you always have, so people know where you've spoken, they know where you're going to speak. And then you say, do you know of any groups or organizations or podcasts that I'd be a good fit for? Just keep asking.
Right. Perfect. So how does one deepen a connection then with a planner of an event or a producer of a show or something like that so that they come, top of mind?
Well, a lot of what I just shared. Mm-hmm. So it's really best practices. I think of it as etiquette. You have to be careful nowadays. Sometimes people hear etiquette and they think that, I'm 60 years old, so I am a grandma. It's like, oh, you're being a grandma, pulling that sage advice, wisdom, right? But no, it's just common sense. In best practices, when you go out of your way to make someone comfortable, you get them the information they want. If anybody asks you for anything, they want your headshot, they want your bio, they want your introduction, they want to know what flavor ice cream you like, whatever it may be, you get them their information right away. Don't make a host or an event planner have to chase you down for that information. Mm-hmm. Be very responsive. Don't be like selective and make things difficult for them. Sometimes speakers, especially for live events, can be so particular about their needs, and that's just not really groovy. When you're going to a live event, I always recommend getting there early, meeting as many people as you possibly can. Try to remember, I'm going off topic, but not really. So I'm going on best practices, but, try to remember a few names if you can. And if you can bring them out in your conversation when you're doing your talk, it's like, oh, I was talking to Gary earlier, this morning, and he was telling me that he likes to play golf at this one place. Well, and then if it's tied into your story, you can do that. And the moment you say someone's name, everybody in the room, they pay attention because you cared enough to remember his name, right? All these things are going to make you a better speaker, is going to increase the chances of them either bringing you back or telling other people about you. Because that event planner, whoever it is that brought you in, they've got a lot riding on you. Mm-hmm. Now, a show host, if they host somebody, that's one of the challenges with live. If it's not live and they do the interview and it's just not gelling, they don't have to release the podcast, right? Right. You have the power. You can say, no, sorry, Anastasia, just don't feel it's in alignment with my people. And that's okay. Then I don't get to come out in February. Right. If someone's doing a live one, that gets a little trickier. So you want to do things that's going to make them really want to work with you and be happy that you did, because especially when it comes to like a program chair or a speaker chair, those members, the people that are coming, the audience or the conference, the people that hired you as an event planner, you got so much writing on that speaker and how they behave. And if they're kind of a jerk face, that's just not groovy, and you will be judged by it. But in addition to coming in a little early, I always recommend people go in and they meet with whomever it is that's going to be doing the AV. And you test your AV ahead of time, and you be really nice to that AV person, because first off, they have a lot of power over the success of your presentation. I just got to say. Second off, word gets back. So if you're snippy with the AV person because your piece of equipment isn't matching with their piece of equipment, that is going to get back to that planner, that speaker chair, and it's just not going to bode well. So there's just, be nice. I guess if I were to say anything, just be nice, treat people like you want to be treated, and that will go a really long way.
And I know sometimes when people are presenting, they're not supposed to make an offer from the stage. And then sometimes they can. Obviously, on my podcast, I always ask, and at the end, I will ask if you have an offer as well. But how can someone know if they can promote their business or make an offer when they're speaking?
You ask. You point blank ask. And what helps is if you can tell them exactly what it is that you would like to offer. Because what I consider an offer, what you consider an offer, could be two totally different things. For you, it might be, would you like my free ebook? For me, it might be, oh, but wait, there's more. Just today, if you buy this for $27, I'll give you the Ginsu knives. They don't know what you're going to be like. So when you have a group that's willing to have you speak, or they've asked you to speak, you can say, hey, this, I would like to extend a soft offer at the end of the presentation. Here is what I would like to offer. I have a $97 workshop that I would like to offer to them for $49. If they would be interested, I promise I will not abuse your platform. I'm not going to make your people feel like it's a hard sell. And in fact, if you would be willing, what would work really well for me would be if you were at the end of the presentation to ask me how a person can go further, or if I have any trainings available, because then I'm only answering your question. I get to then come back and say, well, thank you, Susan, for asking that, because yes, I do actually have workshops on, blah, 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 whatever it is. And in fact, I'd like to, offer anyone who would like to, sign up for one of my workshops. You can meet with me in the back of the room. And normally it's $97, but I'm willing to offer it to you for $49. It just feels very different if you can seed that question at the end. How can a person go further with you? Now you're going to do that with me on this show. And it tends to happen this way more. Almost every podcast show, they're going to say, how can people, be in touch with you? How can they go further with you? The show host may say you cannot make an offer. And that's okay. They at least are going to make it a little bit easier for you to get the information. They have the show notes. That's not as easy to do with the live presentation.
Right.
And even with the virtual presentation, it's not always that easy, because you don't know for sure if they're going to remember to capture the chat on your behalf. You want to always capture your chat, but it's hard to think and be speaking. Like if I were to right now be trying to, if I'm on a Zoom trying to capture my chat while I'm speaking, I might flub things. So it's always good if you can have them capture it for you, but you get clarity on all of that. You got to come at it from the viewpoint that person many times may have experienced a bad speaker, someone who abused that platform. So they can be hypersensitive, and they just want your assurance that you're not going to abuse it, more than anything else. And you could say, I know what it feels like to have someone slime the audience with their offer, and I'm not going to do that. But you need clarity, because if you don't ask in advance and then you just slide that in, then what's going to happen is that if it's one of those groups that they don't like offers, then you just alienated yourself from that whole group, that speaker chair, etc. And you don't want to do that. So you want to know the audience and make sure that you extend an offer that's going to be appropriate for that particular audience.
Right. And you were talking about, some things to do to like help you, become better connected with, the person who's in charge or the podcast host. And there's some things that maybe you're doing that maybe aren't so great that, kind of bother them, but are there any other specific things maybe that you didn't mention yet that could be seen as negative so that you're not invited back again, to speak on the stage or be a podcast guest, that maybe they just aren't aware that they should avoid?
I think a lot of it comes back to what I was talking about. It's the etiquette, it's the best practices. It's making certain that you get everything that they want on time, that you respect their audience, knowing that they are judged by you. And that's really important to always have that in your mindset, to always have the needs of that group, that organization, the podcast listeners, have their needs in mind when you are speaking and sharing from your heart, so that your agenda is not to get business per se. Your agenda is to bless that audience with your message. And when you keep that as the core part of what you're doing, I feel like everything else just kind of flows. Another way of connecting that I do recommend is actually to reach out to the podcast host or the speaker chair, event planner, and connect with them on LinkedIn. So get connected with them, and you can reach out. And by the way, always, please, always, this is like, I get on my soapbox about this, but always send a private message. It's too easy to just hit connect. This is not like Facebook where you don't have a choice. You just have to say, add friend. On LinkedIn, if you don't extend a message when you are reaching out to connect with someone, basically you're telling them, I want to connect with you, but I don't have the time of day to give to you and tell you why I want to connect with you. And so me as a recipient, I'm on the other end. I'm like, okay, this is not a relationship, or even like, I even just got one today. Someone messaged me on LinkedIn. They took the time to message me. All they said was, let's connect. And I looked at their profile and I'm like, okay, well, you're not in my industry. You're not a speaker. We don't have a single common connection. I have no idea why you want to connect with me, but I only accept requests from people that I feel like I might have an actual connection to in a dialogue. Right. This is not a numbers game on LinkedIn. It's quality versus quantity. So send a message and tell them, hey, I'm so looking forward to speaking to your group, on such date. I would love to connect with you here on LinkedIn so we can learn a little bit more about each other before I do my presentation.
Right.
So this way you're connecting with them beforehand, but there is an ulterior motive, because once you're connected with them, then after you've done your presentation or you've done your interview, you can go to that person that you're already connected with on LinkedIn, and you can ask them if they will give you a referral or a reference in LinkedIn, a testimonial in essence, about you as a podcast guest or you as a speaker. And you thank them. So you would, again, don't use the automated, LinkedIn request for recommendation. Wipe all that out, start with a clean slate. Thank you, Candy, for hosting me. I so enjoyed our talk on your interview. You made me feel so comfortable. I'm just letting the cat out. Like, you're going to see all this. So, and then I'm going to say, if you feel comfortable, would you be willing to write a testimonial about how you feel about me and as a podcast guest? Because I would like to be on more shows. And if you happen to know any, actually, I don't do that then. I do it later. In my thank you note, I will ask you if you know of any other shows, but I'm just asking you if you'll consider doing that. And then let go of any attachment, because not everybody likes to do testimonials, and that's okay. Right. If you get a testimonial, the beautiful thing is that you've got it in LinkedIn now. So anybody who's searching for you, anyone who's going to really do due diligence, in particular a speaking gig, are they going to look you up on LinkedIn? If they do, they're going to see these references, right? You can also, because that's a public testimonial that they have just given you, you can use that everywhere. You could drop that on your speaker sheet, your speaker page on your site. You can share about it. Again, it's one more thing to share. Like if I had a testimonial from you, I could then do a separate, message out there like, wow, I don't like to toot my horn very much, but I'm feeling really glorious today because Candy Messer just, shared this testimonial about me when I was on her show, and I can't wait for it to come out. I'll share the link in February when it's available. That then gives me a third reason to be visible about this podcast and tag you in it. More visibility for you, more visibility to me. If you get a testimonial like via email, that's wonderful. You can do all kinds of things with it, but you can't take that and put it on LinkedIn. So try to get them on LinkedIn first. Then you can use that testimonial in other places.
Great tip. So if someone's listening and they're thinking, okay, I want to get out there, I want to speak more, I want to be on these podcasts, and I know it's a lot of work. And I know you briefly touched on this at the beginning of the podcast, but why would someone want to work with you or someone like you when they're going to have to pay fees, of course, for the assistants to be, speaking for free? But why would they go ahead and do that?
Absolutely. So obviously people don't have to hire an agent. In fact, generally, it's very rare that you have someone like me that actually represents people who speak for free, because I'm not a traditional agent. A traditional agent, they represent people who get paid to speak, 5,000 or more, and then they take 20 to 30% of that speaker fee or honorarium. That's not what I do. So with me, I think there's a cachet to having, I know there's a cachet to having an agent represent you. So there is that benefit. The other thing to look at is it the highest and best use of your time? Now, you and I know each other, okay?
Right.
We've co-authored a book. We've known each other for a long time. This is a little bit different. But if I were to have reached out to you and you didn't know me from Eve, it's a little bit harder. Now, if it was as easy as just sending one email and asking to be booked to speak at a meeting or be booked on a podcast, if it was that easy, I wouldn't have this job. But it's not. And I can tell you, as someone who has been doing this for many years, it's a lot of work. The question is it the highest and best use of your time? Any of us who have read the E-Myth mentality, or the book, the E-Book Myth, we know that we are to stick to our brilliance and outsource anything else that we possibly can. You know that in your business. You are the prime example because of what you do. Doesn't make sense for everybody to do their own accounting, whereas they hire a pro because you're better at it. This is what you do. You live, eat, sleep, breathe numbers, right? You know what you're doing. I know what I'm doing. My team, they know what they're doing. Now, you can also hire a VA to do it. They don't all know what they're doing, but many of them are willing to learn. And you may find some VAs that they do specialize in speaker booking. So I'm not saying, in fact, I'm not a good fit for everybody. I have a specific niche that I work with, just like anybody else in their business, they have their niche too. So it's really a matter of determining, is it worth your time to find the groups and organizations and podcasts, to pitch yourself, to follow up with them, to continue the follow-up. Like, our representation is full service. So we do all of that. We send reminders out prior to the group. We send it to the speaker. We follow up with an evaluation form. Like, we do all these things so that the moment our client says, yes, I will speak to, XYZ group, that's it. That's all they have to do. We take care of everything else. So that's just what we offer, but not everybody needs that. Having a VA to do it is very, very viable if you can find someone who gets it and can do that. We have a black book there are groups that trust me implicitly because they know it'd be the kiss of death for me to bring a speaker into them that's not really good and carefully vetted, right? So they will say, like, if I suggest someone, they're far more likely to say yes than someone who's coming in from left field that they don't know anything about. So there is that to it, but no, people don't need my services. The one thing I would suggest that we haven't really spoken of much is that the consulting that I do. So that's something completely separate that I could help anybody with no matter what, is how to better brand themselves. Because if you're not branding yourself well as a speaker or as a podcast guest, it's like you're going to be swimming in mud. When you think about the competition, what you're up against and how many people are trying to get booked on that same show or on that same stage. And, these people, they're looking through a myriad of options. Who's going to stand out? But the ones who professionally present themselves. So it's really important that you have your branding down. And it goes far deeper than just how your one sheet is. Because I do speak on best practices, all this kind of stuff. The grandmother comes out in me and I tell them all kinds of things about how they can better hold themselves as a speaker. Or as our mutual mentor, Katarina Randa, would say, be loud and proud about being a speaker or a podcast guest or whatever it might be. So that is another option. But the main thing is that you do it. Don't put it off. It's just so valuable. And people, I think, get intimidated by the idea of it and the work behind it. But it's like eating an elephant. You just do it one bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
And if you can manage to, get someone to support you in it, then do. If you can't and you got to do it on your own, at least get a little support in knowing what you're doing. So it does help to have help.
Right.
It really does.
Well, this has been great. We've had a lot of information that we're sharing. I know we could talk a lot more, but we are running out of time. So as I did hint at earlier too, I do ask if there's an offer that you would like to extend to our listeners. We'd love to hear it.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. What I have actually is a free offering. So I'm not selling anything, but I am starting up a virtual Q&A for speakers and podcast guests to have an opportunity to come into a monthly Zoom meeting where I will share some tips and tricks on speaker branding or getting booked. But more importantly, open it up for questions. People can send me questions in advance. They can ask me questions there. And it's really just an opportunity to pick the brain of a speaker's agent. And I don't know of any speaker agents that are doing something like this. If there are, I'm not aware of it, but I have so much in my head and I just want people out there sharing their message, whatever it might be. So this is a way that I can give people the opportunity to get answers and learn more about, how they can be more visible and be more effective and to really utilize this as a marketing tool. So I will give you, I believe I have, if not, I will give it to you again. I do have on my website a direct page that is a way for them to sign up. And then they'll just get the invitation. It's going to be the third Thursday of every month at 3 p.m. So it's 333, third Thursday. And at that specific time. And you can invite your friends, just anybody come in. It's on a drop-in basis. As you can tell, I'm pretty casual in how I carry on conversations. I just like to go with the flow. And I'm super excited about it. I have done my first beta test and it went fabulously well. And that's going to be happening at least for 2022, an opportunity to just get together and discuss things that we love, like speaking and guest podcasting.
Nice. It sounds like it's going to be a great resource. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And
yeah, I think
how
so.
can they connect with you otherwise too, besides that?
Well, email, phone number. So my email address, and it's going to be in the show notes because it's a long name, but basically it's my first name and my company name, Access Speakers, and it's .biz, B-I-Z, not com. My phone number is 707-217-1252. And my website, accessspeakers.biz, which, by the way, is under construction. I have rebranded myself, so there's a little few things that need to be tweaked. If anybody finds any mistakes, please let me know, because it's always helpful to have extra eyes. But just giving everyone a heads up. Actually, by February, it better be better. By then, now that I think about it, it should be pretty good by then and have everything in line. But yeah, anyone can reach out to me at any time if they just have some questions. This world is so big. I have no competition. You know, I tend to give freely from my heart just because I believe that speaking is a great way to share a message. And if a person has a message of value and they're not sharing it, I believe they're doing the world a disservice. So I want to do my part to help people get out there more with that message.
That's my goal too. Why I even have this podcast is help get out information, you know, that's going to help entrepreneurs too. So I'm glad that you were able to be on the show and, you know, share your expertise.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Candy. I so appreciate you, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Nice. Well, thank you. Thanks. And I do also want to thank the listeners for tuning in today. I hope you found this topic interesting and that it answered some questions about build your public speaking business to generate influence, awareness, and clients. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Anastasia at any of the links that she shared, or send us a message at media@abandp.com. And would you please share our show information with those you know? I'd greatly appreciate your support. I hope you can join us for next week's topic, cybersecurity in entrepreneurship. And please remember, you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. And you can find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms, including Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Until next time, have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next Tuesday. Have a terrific week.